by Morgan Housel. Yes, I have a co-presenter here, and we're going to do justice to this review together. Or do you want to go? Okay. Bye-bye. Daddy is here. Daddy is here. Daddy is here. Go and meet Daddy. Daddy is here. Yes. Daddy is here. Go and meet him. Daddy is here. All right. Sorry about that. Yes. So we actually ended the psychology of money yesterday officially by reviewing chapter 20, which is titled Confessions. Joy, please come and close this door. All right. So today we are going to be reviewing the postscript. Close the door, please. The postscript, which is a brief history of why the US consumer thinks the way they do. It is very important to understand why a people, a nation, think the way they do. So I welcome you all to this final review of the psychology of money. To understand the psychology of the modern consumer and to grasp where they might be heading next, you have to know how they got there. So how did the US get here? How did we get here as Nigerians or as Ugandans, South Africans? Whatever your nationality, there is always a story, a history behind how your people spend money or how they behave with money, right? So how did we all get here? Now we're going to take the US as a case study. If you fell asleep in 1945 and woke up in 2020, you would not recognize the world around you. That is because everything has changed drastically. The amount of economic growth that took place during that period is virtually unprecedented. If you saw the level of wealth in New York and San Francisco, you would be shocked if you compared it to the poverty in Detroit. You'd be shocked. If you saw the prices of homes, college tuition, and healthcare, you would also be shocked. If you saw how average Americans think about savings and spending in general, you would be shocked. If you try to think of a reasonable narrative of how it all happened, my guess is that you'll be totally wrong, right? Because it isn't intuitive. Nobody saw it coming. It's not something that anybody could imagine. The change was drastic. Thank you. Was very drastic, and it wasn't foreseeable. Nobody saw it coming, right? It's just like now in Nigeria when people are complaining that, oh, the economy is so harsh and everything. And a year from now, everything is working so fine. People are becoming prosperous. Naira to dollar rate is now 100 naira to $1 and things like that. That is the scenario that I'm trying to paint here, or that the author is trying to paint for us. Like it was a drastic change. So what happened in America since the end of World War II is the story of the American consumer, how they come about, how they spend money now, how they save money, mortgage, how mortgage came about, how consumer debts came about, student loans and everything, right? It's a story that helps explain why people think about money the way they do today. So things were not very certain, and they were very, very good. Then they went pretty bad, really good, bad, and here we are today. So let's quickly take this story to try and understand it. We're going to take 10 points very quickly to understand how things moved gradually until Americans got to where they are today, right? And in a way, you can try to, relate it to how things happen or happened in your own country as well. So the number one point is that in August 1945, World War II ended. Japan surrendered, and it was the happiest day in American history, according to the New York Times, you see. But there is this saying that history is just one damn thing after another. The World War II ended, people were so happy, but then the next question is, what next? What happens now? Because 16 million Americans, which happen to be 11% of the population, served in the war. and about 8 million of them were overseas, right? Their age was 23. Within 18 months, all but 1.5 million of them would be home and out of uniform. That means they were going to be jobless. So what then? What were they going to do next? Where were they going to work? Where were they going to live? Those were the most important questions of the day, for two reasons. Number one, because no one knew the answers to these questions. And number two, if they couldn't answer them quickly, the economy was going to slip back into the depths of the Great Depression, right? So 3 focuses are built up during the war. Number one, housing construction ground to a halt, because during the war, people were not building houses. It's just like, say, only one house was being built in Lagos, one house in Ibadan, one house in Port Harcourt, like one house per city were being built during the war. And that's because the focus of everybody was on the war. Number two, specific jobs created during the war, like building ships, tanks, and everything, were not necessary anymore. So it means that those people who were doing these jobs were going to be unemployed. Number three, marriage rates spiked, because those who were going to be returning, those soldiers, they didn't want to go back to their mothers and fathers' houses. They wanted to start raising their own families, like they've now come of age. Right? And this brought a lot of worries. It brought a lot of concerns to people. How are they going to accommodate them? What's going to happen next? So number two thing that happened to try and curtail the problem was that low interest rates and the intentional birth of the American consumer sprang up. So the first thing that policymakers and the government at the time did was to keep the economy afloat after the war. What they did to keep the economy afloat after the war was to keep interest rates low. So you could borrow money and pay very little interest rates. It wasn't an easy decision, right? But because soldiers came back home to America to shortages, no homes, no money, no jobs, and all of that. So they used that to encourage them. Otherwise, inflation was going to double. Things were going to go so bad, right? But low rates did something else for all the returning GIs. It made borrowing to homes, cars, gadgets, toys, phones cheap. Maybe not phones. I'm not sure if there were phones there. But everything now became cheap because people could borrow money just because the interest rate was low. So everybody now started borrowing money. It was an era of encouraging thrift and savings to fund the war, quickly turned into an era of actively promoting spending. I mean, if I can borrow money and pay very little interest, what am I waiting for? So it encouraged people to spend. They would just borrow, buy cars, buy houses, and all of that, right? And that was the time that mortgage even became very, very cheap. Unprecedented mortgage opportunities. 16 million veterans could buy a home, often with no money down, without any deposits. People could buy a home. No interest in the first year, and fixed rates so low that monthly mortgage payments could be lower than a rental. So it was even cheaper, or probably cheaper, to get a mortgage than to be paying house rent. So people went for that. The third thing that happened was that pent-up demand for stuff fed by a credit boom and a hidden 1930s productivity boom led to an economic boom, right? Because people were now borrowing and all of that, and they had money to do businesses, to do everything. So people were now thinking, what can they do? So they became very resourceful. And it was during that period that people started manufacturing things, appliances, cars, phones, air conditioners, electricity, Their creativity was bettered on a new level. They became very productive, they became very creative, they became very innovative, which was a good thing, and the economy boomed during this period. Then number 4, gains are shared more equally than ever before. Because the economy was booming around the 1950s, the country got rich by making the poor less poor. So the gap between the poor and the rich was very narrow. Not just between the gap and the rich, even between minority groups. There was now synchronization between the blacks, the whites, African Americans, and all of these minority groups, right? The gaps was closed to a large extent. It wasn't a big gap between the rich and the poor and all of that. Everybody who had been left behind a decade before, they were now closing the gap. The social economic status was almost equal. Even women held jobs, which was not something that was prevalent before. Women held jobs outside the home in record numbers. People who were overlooked before, who were sidelined before, they were all now beginning to gain recognition. They all had identity, right? Which was a good thing. We were literally in sync. Whether black or white, whether rich or poor, everybody was at par, kind of. Then number 5, debt rose tremendously, but so did incomes. So the impact wasn't a big deal because people were now used to borrowing in America. You can borrow with very low interest rates, right? And at the same time, there were now jobs. People were becoming very productive. So people were borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. But the good thing was that as they were borrowing, their incomes were rising. They were earning more money. So it wasn't a big deal. They didn't feel it that much. They didn't feel it that much at all. Between 1947 and 1957, it was manageable. At least if you are borrowing money, by the time you collect your salary at the end of the month, you'll be able to pay back. So the spending culture was really encouraged, borrowing culture, and it is what is still obtainable today. As I was reading this, I was wondering, I am a Nigerian, and I was wondering, okay, we don't have this kind of culture, not the borrowing culture per se, of course, people borrow everywhere, but this culture of mortgage, or is it policy, whatever, mortgage, buying things on credit, like you can go to the car garage and pick a car and be paying every month. It's not something that is prevalent here. And I was trying to think around it. What could be the reason? And the only reason that I can allude to it is that we have no data, right? We are very, very poor at record keeping. And I'm speaking from the point of a researcher. There were times that I've had to do research in Nigeria, go to institutions, go to organizations to get data. And most times, data was non-existent. It wasn't. There was no data. So if you go to a car dealer, right, to get a car, they can't even trace you that, the records are not there. Like in America, for example, they can see your paycheck, they can check your credit score, they can go to your employer, you can get all the documents, they know if you'll be able to pay back. But here, anybody can just go say, I work in so place. They can even fabricate documents or whatever like that. So there's no way to trace people. If you sell on credit, you are not sure. And all of that. So no data, there's no synchronization in the way that we do things, such that, if I go to a particular ministry, I can track Mr. Gbenga's records to say, okay, these are the places he has worked over the years, and all of these will be correct. There's nothing like that, right? Even though now people are trying to encourage it. What's the name of this bank? There's a mortgage bank in Nigeria, and I see some real estate companies partnering with the mortgage bank, right? The Federal Mortgage Bank, yes, Federal Mortgage Bank, to do that and all of that. Even with NIN and BVN, my brother, data is, when I was doing this research that I talked about, not a one-off thing, as in, I was really frustrated. I was stressed. Like, you mean you don't keep records of all these things? Meanwhile, I went to some other countries and it was easy. In fact, you didn't even need to go there. I had to travel down to Nigeria to do this research. For many other countries that I also researched on, I got data online. I didn't even have to visit institutions in person, per se. So this is not something good at all. Let's move away from there. Number 6, things start cracking. In 1973, 1973 was the first year where it became clear the economy was walking down a new path. So all of this borrowing by Americans, getting mortgage, buying things on credit, rise in income and everything, it started taking a downturn, right? Things started cracking, recession began that year, and it's brought about unemployment to the highest that it had been since the 1930s. There was unemployment, there was recession, there was inflation. Unlike the post-war spikes, inflation stayed high, recession stayed high. People started to feel it because they've been on a spending spree, and it was now beginning to affect the economy, right? That is to say, in line with what we have been earning so far, if you do not control your spendings, a time will come when you start feeling it. It's going to start biting you, right? You cannot sustain it. To say that you want to be on a spending spree forever, you have to be disciplined. There has to be some form of caution there, whether as an individual or as a nation. Number 7, the boom resumes, but it's different than before. Thankfully, I think they retraced the policies and lifestyles somewhere, right? And growth started to come back. Growth was the highest it had been since the 1950s, right? Then they had fewer employment rates to the tune of 6 million people. That means more people now had jobs and everything, right? Somebody said, what's his name? President Clinton boasted in his 2000 State of the Union speech. I'm just gonna read the last part. He said, we have built a new economy. It was indeed a new economy for America. Things were beginning to take shape again, and they just got something right? Americans held on to 2 ideas rooted in the post-World War II economy, that we should live a lifestyle similar to most other Americans. Remember, we said that the gap between the rich and the poor was now closed. In fact, middle-income people were experiencing salary raises than even the rich people. So they could shop in the same places, they could buy the same clothes, they could drive virtually the same kind of cars, buy the same kinds of houses and all of that, and you wouldn't know, right? You are the only one that would know that, hey, me, I'm borrowing more to fund this lifestyle than my rich counterparts. That you live a lifestyle similar to most Americans, and that taking on debt to finance that lifestyle is acceptable. So the culture of debt was really encouraged in America at this time. Now, the big stretch, because people now saw themselves to be like almost on the same level. And there's a good scenario here. Mr. Joe, an investment banker, making $900,000 a year. He buys a 4,000 square foot house with 2 Mercedes and sends 3 of his kids to Pepperdine. I guess that's a very expensive school because he can afford it. Now, Mr. Peter sees the lifestyle of Mr. Joe. He doesn't know how much he's earning. He has no idea. But it just feels like, Mr. Joe is riding a Mercedes Benz. He's sending his children to Pepperdine school. He's driving Mercedes. Look at his house. He lives on the 4,000 square meters. But Mr. Peter is only earning for $80,000. Imagine $80,000 to Mr. Joe, who is earning $900,000 per year. I believe with you, my brother. Nigeria is going to be great someday. Yeah. You see, that's the difference of how much? $820,000 difference. But yet, Mr. Peter is just looking at the lifestyle of Mr. Joe, and he's also living that lifestyle. He sends his children to expensive schools. He also gets an expensive car. He's trying to keep up with the Joneses. But then he's now borrowing more. It takes a huge mortgage. He has $45,000 of credit card debts. He leases 2 cars. He's paying small, right? Because everybody is trying to keep up with the Joneses. Everybody wants to drive the same kind of car. They don't even care whether that man is earning more or anything. They just want to live the same kind of life. So it's a big stretch. It became a big stretch. The poor and the middle class were now stretching themselves to keep up with the lifestyle of the poor. That is one mistake you should never make. That is one bad behavior you should never have with money. Don't compare yourself. Don't be pressured to keep up with the Joneses. You don't know people's budgets. You don't know their income. You don't know their lifestyle. You don't even know the job they do. Maybe they are robbing banks to fund their lifestyles. You do not know. Maybe they are into any diabolical thing that is bringing them money. You do not know. But if you judge them based on their outward appearances and you are running your own race based on that, you are making a very terrible mistake. And at the end of the day, you'll be the one to bear the brunt, right? Number 9, the second to the last. Once a paradigm is in place, and it is very hard to turn it around. So all of this lifestyle and culture of the Americans that started since the end of World War II in 1930, right? Sorry, 1945, right? It was now difficult to reverse. And that is pretty much what is still obtainable now. You get mortgage, you get credit card, you can borrow money, you can live a big lifestyle. I know a family, where the husband and the wife, they both have brand new cars, brand new. They're paying in installments. They work every month. They work their asses off so that they keep paying. If at any point income stops flowing, it's going to be a big problem for them. So they have to keep working. But then you will see them in town. You'll be admiring the car that, this car is so nice. Wow. You don't know that they bought it on credit. Meanwhile, you hustling and trying and paying for things that you can afford part-time outrightly, you may be better, because like the author has told us, whatever you do with money, make sure it is what will enable you to sleep well at night. If you don't have the heart and the shock absorber for debt, such that once your phone beeps, you think it's your creditor that is trying to message you and your blood pressure rises, don't do it, right? So it was not difficult to reverse all of these spending sprees, taking loans and everything. The paradigm might remain the same. Number 10, the last but not the least, the Tea Party, Occupy Wall Street, Brexit, Donald Trump, each represents a group shouting, "Stop the riot, we want off." Now, there have been so many scenarios, not just in America alone. You heard Brexit, which happened in the United Kingdom. Everybody is now becoming aware. And what made them to become aware? The internet, social media. People are now seeing that the kind of lifestyle that we're living in America is not the kind of lifestyle that they are living in South Africa, It's not the kind of lifestyle that they are living in the Netherlands. Why are we permitting all of this? The British are now saying, oh, we want Brexit. All those people from neighboring European countries, let them go. We want to opt out of European Union. Let us be alone. Let us prioritize some other things. People are becoming aware. They are now seeing that the culture that has crept in over the years is kind of faulty. They wanted to start afresh, right? People are shouting, but they are all shouting at least in part because stuff isn't working for them within the context of the post-war expectation that stuff should work roughly the same for roughly everyone. They saw that, see, this thing is not working for everybody again. They're trying to close their doors. And not just in America, even in Africa. If you go to South Africa, for example, to use that as a case study for Africa, yeah, they'll be like, oh, if you're a foreigner, there are so many policies in place to make sure that as a foreigner, you cannot just come and take the job that belongs to a South African citizen. Right? Everybody's trying to tighten the knots, the loopholes and everything to guard their resources, to protect their people. And internet is making this more obvious. Statistics. At the time you start hearing that, so number of Nigerians hold jobs in this sector and all of that, people are becoming angry. And we citizens are hungry, we are suffering. No, they must go, and things like that. Right. Unemployment rate is now the lowest it's been in decades. Wages are now actually growing faster for low-income workers than the rich. So they're trying to see how some of these things that the end of World War II ushered in, and to see how there can be a paradigm shift. All right. So think about your own country. In what way or ways do you think that your people are spending? What is the behavior of people generally towards money? I don't want to talk about Nigeria right now so that I don't drag this too far, but think about yours and think about you as a person. Do you borrow money? Do you like to buy things on credit? Do you live above your means? Or are you very big on savings and investments and all of that? Are you making wise money decisions? What is your psychology about money? All right. Thank you very much. History is just one damn thing after another. We've come to the end of this book. How many days did it take us to review this? 21 days. Yeah, that's 3 weeks. Well done. If you've been attending the reviews from the beginning, clap for yourself. Give yourself a pat on the back. Good job. I wish I could do giveaway, but well done. Congratulations. You made it. You have been consistent. You have been so dedicated, and that is a very good thing to do. The next book we're going to review is Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. With that book, you're going to kill procrastination. You're going to take hold of the actions that you should be taking, responsibility and everything. This year, you will do all that you set out to do by God's grace. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you all. Please don't forget to like this video, share your comments with me in the comment section below, and please subscribe to this channel in case you are yet to subscribe. I remain Olaide Agbaje, also known as First Lady, and on this channel, I inspire you to live intentionally. I'll see you on Monday with Eat That Frog. Until then, be intentional. Bye-bye, and thank you for all your wonderful comments. God bless you all. Yes, that's one of the reasons for xenophobia. That's one of the big reasons. All right.